And they had 30 people employed. They're good at what they were doing right good scripts. They know sales methodology. They know how to close a deal. They know how to book a meeting, all these kinds of things. After implementing AI, there are 12 people.
What's the biggest blind spots you see in their sales system before they even think about automations?
They don't enforce it, or they're not meticulous enough in terms of following through and have leading their sales team in an efficient way. You cannot automate chaos. Pick one problem, pick one issue, pick one area where you think you can improve, and let's work on that. And there are policies around, and we have some legislation in Europe that is a little bit different than other parts of the world, maybe. People are scared and skeptical, and we can only use Microsoft Copilot. That's the only tool we're allowed to use in our company. So if I cannot identify a super user or a champion, then I say no. I go to the next company. Well, there are so many things, Justin, in terms of what are the pitfalls. Number one is it took about 10 years, and you should not take that long. You should do this quickly. It doesn't have to take that long. There are goals and there are tactics, and then, of course, there are a lot of activities. But in terms of vision and strategy, pick your segment. Pick your ICP. When I was working in New York, my time was worth $20,000 an hour. So I was very conscious about the fact if my hourly rate is $20,000 in terms of revenue, not in terms of what I earn, but in terms of the revenue.
Welcome to FlowMax AI Podcast, where we bring future leaders to you on this podcast. In every episode, there will be much more value for you when you want to transform your business. And I have a special guest today, and this guest has been in the sales arena for quite a while, and he has been adopting AI into his methodologies and into his work. And I bring you Urban. Hi, Urban.
Hi, Justin. Such a privilege to be on your show today. I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk about and share experiences in terms of sales and AI.
Beautiful, beautiful. And thank you for coming into my show. So we're going to talk about directly into the podcast itself, which we will provide extremely high value for our audiences. And we're going to start about you. So let's talk about, like, in your work with founders, with salesperson, with enterprise, with probably small business owners they have dealt with. What's the biggest blind spots you see in their sales system before they even think about automations?
Right. Well, there are so many things, Justin, in terms of what are the pitfalls. Number one is they don't have a clear sales process. I think that's what I find over and over. Of course, there are exceptions. There are some very well-oiled sales organizations, but on average, the clients that I meet, even big corporate global enterprises, on a European level, I'm in Sweden, Scandinavia, operate mostly within Europe. So when I come across, even as I said, multinationals, they still have a kind of a vague understanding of the sales process, and particularly when it comes to driving it as a sales leader, they don't enforce it, or they're not meticulous enough in terms of following through and have leading their sales team in an efficient way. You cannot automate chaos. So you need to organize yourself first, right?
Yes, definitely. I fully agree with chaos. Chaos is like the biggest thing. And in terms of when you have that chaotic system, or you don't even know exactly what your sales systems are or what's the sales process, how would you be able to guide them in terms of, I'm just curious how you would be able to guide your clients, especially if they're business owners or founders.
Right. So, a lot of people come to me and say, Urban, can you help us with implementing AI? Sure, I can. What do you want? What do you want to do? And they don't know, right? So I don't know. And so when I come into that situation, you need to spend some time interviewing them, understanding what they're up to, see if they're AI ready or not. And so I have a set of questions that I use to assess where they are on their journey. And I always suggest that they start small. Pick one problem, pick one issue, pick one area where you think you can improve, and let's work on that. Let's not be schematic and think of big architectural things, but just fix one problem, learn from that, and go on. If they have no prior experience, if they're advanced, and if they're utilizing their CRM systems, because most CRM systems today have AI capabilities included, right? So it depends on the level of maturity. If I look at the statistics here in the Nordic countries, it's like 15% are starting to implement AI in a little bit more proper way, whereas 86% of business owners or business leaders are hesitant to even implement AI. So, and there are policies around, and we have some legislation in Europe that is a little bit different than other parts of the world, maybe. So people are scared and skeptical, and we can only use Microsoft Copilot. That's the only tool we're allowed to use in our company. So there are a lot of hinders in that way, right? And so from a political or in a policy point of view within the companies that I come across a lot. And so then people will have to go and do skunk works to implement AI in a more rigorous way.
Wow, I mean, I'm surprised. Like, you can only use Microsoft Copilot. That's a little bit of very restricted.
Yeah, it's a strange world where I live. I think this year this is going to change. It has to change, and so I'm very hopeful and excited about the future opportunities of implementing AI in European businesses.
And just curious, when you have that restriction, what's your way around in terms of, would you be able to still use AI in terms of implementing in your clients' systems, sales systems?
For the companies that say they have these rigorous kind of limitations, I usually don't. What I do is I take a step back and I say, okay, I can train you on the basics of how AI works, and we can have some use cases that you can try out on the side, and then we can talk later. So again, starting small. Where is the entry level for each customer? And I think there are some other requirements, right? They need to be interested, willing. There typically has to be a champion within the organization, or a super user of some sort. So if I cannot identify a super user or a champion, I like to call them champions, then I say no. I go to the next company.
So that's a critical element for you to be able
Yeah.
to implement the systems, and
Yeah,
that's
I don't want to fight my way through the IT department and chief technical officers being all upset. Well, of course, we need to be proper in terms of privacy laws and security concerns, and where things are hosted and things like that. Absolutely. But there's a lot of skepticism around. Is
and
that different in
also
your part of the world?
in terms of restriction, I wouldn't say there's a lot of restriction in terms of tools. In my experience, it's more about the privacy issue.
Yeah.
So that's probably where the restriction comes from. It's
Yeah.
more of that, and it depends on what size of the business are you dealing with. Is it the enterprise? Is it the small medium? And is it the startups? So
Right.
it would also depends on who, and in my opinion is also about which specific AI tools are we talking about.
In terms of, well, let's not talk too much about the legislation locally in Europe, but it came out of the privacy initiative, and then there are now kind of best practices and risk levels and other things that need to be monitored for companies over a certain size. Yeah.
Mm, yes, definitely. And do you have any clients outside Europe or outside within this legislation that you have been having a restriction, or are you just in
No,
this?
not currently. I have a European customer base today. I mean, we're doing some work with Costa Rica and the US a little bit, but the main bulk of the business is local.
Okay, and they don't have restrictions like this, right?
No, the privacy issues is similar to what you described. Yeah.
I see. I see. Well, that's very challenging. I'm curious about how you're dealing with it, but let's go into much more of Do you remember any time that when a company tried to jump into AI too early, like what went wrong in that situation?
Well, yes, I have had people, business owners and sales teams come to me and say, we tried AI and it didn't work, right? So that's a common objection. What was it that didn't work for you? Well, we didn't get the output we expected. Okay. Then if they're interested to learn, we can teach them about expert prompting and some of the other things that you can do on a technical level to improve the output results. And there, it makes all the difference in the world, as you well know, in terms of doing having good prompts and being able to set your system up to create the right tonality and everything else. So I personally, I've written 5 books on sales and communication. So I took everything that I've from those books, and I created my own tonality map and linguistic fingerprint, as it were. And then recently I found like 100 hours of lectures that I had performed or had previously, and I put them into an assistant. So I now I'm starting to build a digital version of myself, right, with my books and with my teaching. It's very exciting times.
Okay, so going back to the question of about like what was that the scenario that you mentioned that some people are jumping too early or
They're not digging deep enough. They're just, scratching the surface, and then they come to the conclusion, well, it doesn't work, right?
mm,
But it does. If you know what you're doing, if you have the fundamental sales knowledge and the skills in terms of communication and the technology understanding, you can make it work. And that's my kind of point where I'm in terms of where I teach these things. We have courses and classes. My company is Power Sales Communication, and where we have Power Sales AI as a division of that. It's very exciting, and the interest for learning more is very high. So yeah, I think it will grow exponentially, even even here.
wow, you have 5 books and you have also an AI course. That's fantastic. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Congratulations. If you want, we can share that at the end of this. I mean, with this video, this podcast, we can share the links if you want to
Hmm.
share those. And by
Yeah.
the way, are those in English?
That's important. What today it's easy to speak 6 to 8 languages, right, with the help of AI. We're in the process of translating and giving the first English version of the AI class.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's great.
So
That's great.
yeah.
And let's go into a much more. I would say it's much more targeted. So let's just say we defining the ICP. It's like the ideal customer profile. How how did you narrow down your own customer focus after like working across multiple industries, and what changed when you did that,
Hmm.
when you were able to be very clear and very focused?
Right, it makes a lot of difference, right? And our company struggled for a struggle. We were doing all right. We had, the 80-20 rule, where you 20% of the customer gives you 80% of the revenue, and so forth. So we had some big accounts, key accounts, that we managed as a key account, and I still do. And initially we developed 3 avatars, right? So we had, this is the sales guy, and this is the sales manager, and this is a company owner. So we tried to speak to 3 different personas at the same time, which was crazy. And so we struggled with that for a few years until we decided to focus on the man with, or woman with the budget, right? So today my ICP is a sales leader. If you're leading a sales team, I want to talk to you. You are my customer. And once you know who you're talking to, people will identify much easier with your message. and it's you sort the ones, the tire kickers that just looking, or just curious.
Just
They
asking.
go out by the window. So it's you get much more precision when you develop a persona. And I like the old technology or the concept from the marketing arena, where you develop this avatar in quite detail. You know, where does this person live? How much? What do they think about? Where do they get their information? What is important to them? What age are they? All those kinds of things makes it much easier to shoot a target. And then people that are not that age, well, they will feel included anyway. So it works super well. So it's back to your question. It's very important that you define your ICP. Like with the chisel, like Michelangelo's sculptures, you sculpture your ICP over time. And of course, because people's behaviors will change also, and habits will change with this new technology coming in. So you have to update it.
Exactly, exactly. And just curious, right? When were you able to realize that that was very critical in your business, and when did you implement to narrow it down?
It's like I've been running my own company since 2007, and it's been probably it took me it was a journey of maybe 10 years before I could chisel this detail ICP out. I had it in some niches of my business already from years earlier, but to get to this, who am I speaking to? Who is my customer? It took about 10 years, and you should not take that long. You should do this quickly. It doesn't have to take that long. Just but I want to sell to this person. I think this is an interesting business. Yeah, it may be, but please focus. In terms of strategy, the old saying is that you can only have one strategy. Like you need a vision where you're going. How is the world going to be different when you're done? That's your broad vision. And then in terms of strategy, you need to have the sort of, this is the one path I'm going on to make it happen. And then there are goals and there are tactics, and then of course there are a lot of activities. But in terms of vision and strategy, pick your segment. Pick your ICP, your ideal customer profile, and stick with it for a while. If it and you can always change it later, but don't try to run on three different roads at the same time.
Yes, and that was what you mentioned earlier, right? That you have three probably avatars or ICP,
Hmm.
and then
Yes.
you tone it down into one.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And do you think in every stages in the business, like it could be a startup, it could be a small medium, would you recommend that they could also streamline it down into just one?
Yes, I was in New York. I worked for a multinational with multiple lines of businesses, right? So you have an umbrella. If you have a global brand, you would have to look at this from a branding perspective, and then each business unit need to focus on one thing. In my
Mm.
opinion, in my humble opinion, I should say.
Need to focus, you mean, if it's different brands under one umbrella, they'll just focus on one target or
No,
ICP?
no, in terms of, well, it depends. If you want to waste a lot of marketing dollars, you can have multiple brand. I mean, it depends on the business you're in. But if to take a Swedish Chinese venture, the Volvo car, for example, right? They need to focus on one thing, and there are a lot of other things. Okay, so they invented the safety belt, strap over the breast thing, and they've been known for safety for 60 years, right? And of course, they have a lot of other USPs or unique selling propositions, but they're still famous for safety. And so that they have like a focus. And then for a car brand, of course, you niche into different products, family car, race car, maybe some other trucks and some other businesses. So you diversify, and then when you have a big company like that, will have to approach each market differently. But I say for each market, I think you need to understand your customer. You need to understand your customer profile.
So it still boils down to the safety, but they are targeting different models. they are
Yeah,
targeting.
different customers for different things. For a bus driver or for like a, for trucks, it's still safety for truck drivers, right? But the channels by which they sell, they are different, and the messaging is different based on that.
Whoa! All right, wow, that's super valuable. And let's go into more about, let's talk about sales. Like, let's talk about AI outreach that
Hmm.
doesn't suck. Like, there's so many tools out there. Like, what does effective AI powered outreach look like in real life? And how do
Yes.
you keep it personal without sounding like too robotic, too generic, too, the impression about AI is more like, oh, like the pattern, the answers are quite similar if you're going to
Yes.
use it, right? So,
Yeah, fascinating area, and I think the outreach area with the SDR of today, the person calling, cold calling prospect on the phone, that's where the biggest shift is coming first, or it's already begun in a big way. I was talking to a customer of mine like 2 weeks ago. It's a Swedish company, but they're based in a different country in Europe. I won't give names away here, but they had it is a call center, right? And they had 30 people employed, and they were good at what they were doing right, good scripts. They know sales methodology, they know how to close a deal, they know how to book a meeting, all these kinds of things. And then so now, after implementing AI, there are 12 people, they make more money, and they have a higher margin than they used to be. And the cost per meeting or cost per lead went down by a factor of 100, not 10x, 100x. AI has made it possible to get a lead for 100 times less than like contracting call center in the past. So it's huge. It's mega huge. And people will have to realize that soon, or they'll be they'll be run over basically, unless you adapt to this. And there are a lot of companies that do this at scale, particularly from the call center industry. And when they have their own tonality, either it's cheeky or it's personal in different ways. What I personally like is to when I prospect, I do outreach. I have some information about who is it I'm going to contact, name, what is his professional role, what's the name of the company, and then I do a first basic AI search for the detail. Can you give me the phone number and the email address, blah blah blah. And then I have like some idea of what, either I've met them in the past, or I have an idea of their pain or the needs. And then and as I can flush that out a little bit, and you can even get it from the news, right? So yeah, so I have a daily update. So I get 10 new leads every day, enrich the data with something from the newspaper, an article, what they're into, what they're working on, what their initiatives are. Because if you want to sell big, you want to stay with the customer's key initiative in mind. Not your, I mean, most outreaches, they stay with their initiative in mind. We are a web company and we want to help you with this, and we're the best in class and we do it very cheap and blah, blah, blah. So most salespeople focus on themselves or the product or the service. Focus on the customer, and the tonality should be focused on the customer. And so there are multiple ways where you can enrich the data to write very personal messages that are very difficult to ignore for people once if they open the mailbox, if you will. If you go by email, or if you go by social networks like LinkedIn or some other, or now WhatsApp is popular in your part of the world, in South America and other places, right? Not so much for business here, but I know it's catching on.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's super because you get so much spam like content today because it's so easy. Again, if it's 100 times cheaper to do an outreach, 100 times more people will do outreaches, and 90% of them will suck. Sorry, excuse me for my English, but it's not good. And so a business owner or a sales manager or a CEO, they're going to stop listening to that. And I'm always very interested in what is trending, and how the behaviors are changing or habits are changing with people. because what, like 2, 3, 4 years ago, LinkedIn was very hot because it was a bit novel and not a lot of people were using it. Now it's a different space. I'm old enough to remember the fax machine, right? Maybe fax is a better channel to reach your customer. And I have a sequence for that. And there's this biological side of sales, right? Where I saw beginning of this year, Google had done a research that said you need 11 points of contacts before a customer buy on average. So contact points 11 times, right? So how do you do that? And so I developed a sequence that I use in terms of in which order I do what, and how that seems to translate into higher conversion rates, which is cool.
Yeah, it's very critical about those 11 touch points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially when these touch points, like as you said, right? If it's going to be robotic, if it's going to be like something like, oh, here we go again, this is like we already filtered that, okay, this is like a cold call, right? And
Right.
when you have that, even for people, right, it's already similar to the level of robotic. And the last thing we
Yeah.
want is to have a
Yeah.
system which also will sound like, oh, here we go again, another
Abs-
sales call. And so what we want.
exactly. So I've been working with this idea of warming up. I don't do cold calls, right? I warm the client up. I like to, 3, 4, 5 touch points
Mhm.
before the call, right? And once in the call, however you do the outreach in a mail or with a DH, in big deals, I even send a DHL envelope because that will happen, that will land on the desk of the decision maker quickly, and people typically open those, right? So if people open 20% of the mailbox, they open 100% of a DHL package, right? That's
Mm.
expensive. You cannot do that for everyone. But if it's a big deal at stake, yeah, you can. And
Wow.
and so you need to be so warming the client up is so important, and having common denominators, super easy to utilize, super easy to use. So, either you have a referral or you have some other connection. So you figure out the other connection, and then just by knowing that you have this connection, you're going to sound different. If you know what you're doing, you're going to sound different on the phone, you're going to sound different on the keyboard when you write a letter, and then you can automate those letters, right? You can fine tune the system that you're using to be more adaptable to those kind of tonality changes. And of course, you need to change the tonality slightly depending on where you are in the sales cycle.
Exactly. And what about does this, I would say, AI powered outreach using voice? Is that something that you think, in your opinion, could also be one of the part of the process of doing an outreach?
Yeah, I think that I haven't not tried. I mean, it was big in the American election last time. There's a lot of use for that already. I have not personally tried that yet. I think it could be valuable to add. You need to, I think you have to have a very good model for, not sounding robotic in terms of talking, but I mean, there are models out there that can do this today.
Maybe that could be the next level of voice outreach with AI, and that's something
Yes.
that would be very intriguing. What will be
Yeah,
the
I mean,
results?
well, it's a question of conversion rate and cost to deal ratio, right? But you absolutely right. Last couple of years, there's been some success with video outreach. You record a personal video snippet and send that. More than half of the ones who receive those will open it and look at it. And if you use their first name, people are going to be impressed, right? But that will also change, I think. So, but yeah, you're right. It's interesting to think about video and voice, and also where you now have these amazing models that it's very difficult to see the difference between reality and deep fake, if you will.
Yes, there's
we're
this some sort of distinction.
Yes,
But
but
do you
so
believe?
we're moving into unknown territory here right now.
Okay, okay. And let's jump back into let's talk about, if we're gonna talk about system before scale, like you mentioned about earlier, most like SMEs, like small medium, lack structured sales processes. What does
Hmm.
the minimum viable, like for sales system, look like before layering AI?
Right. I think you have to, you pick a CRM that first of all, know what you need, or have an idea of what you need as a sales leader. So you specify what you want to buy. You just don't go out and buy any old thing or any new thing. But assuming you pick correctly, like there are a lot of low level entry products today that are very decent and with strong capabilities to integrate. I've been over the years. I've been using not all the systems, but the major ones I've been involved with over 20, 30, 25 years, something like that. But now, like HubSpot and Pipedrive on the low end, they and Salesforce on the high end, they're investing heavily into AI. And I just ran into those guys a couple of weeks ago where they had a showcase in Stockholm. So you build a system, or you select the sort of tech stack, basic tech stack for sales enablement. But then number two, you train the people and you make sure that it's being used. And also I had problems in the 90s or in the early 20s 21st century, when it's around the 2000, where people were finally using the systems, but they did it nilly-willy or ran, they had different criterias that they all applied. So you have to make sure that you agree on the vocabulary, and then develop, I think, having a pipeline, and having a managed pipeline where you define the steps and the criterias for reaching each step. And when you got that, that's where you can really, that's when you mature as a sales leader, once you have those tools in place, and once you have not only this sort of technical process, but also what's going to happen today, what's going to happen this week, what's going to happen on a monthly basis, what's going to happen on a quarterly basis. So you have a structure and you have a rhythm to what you're doing. Get the rhythm right, get the system, the process in place, then get a rhythm, and then you keep tracking your prospects and your sales opportunities through the funnel. And that's when you have a system that works as a sales leader. Once you have that, now we can implement AI support different levels. And I think on the outreach side, on the SDR cold calling side, you can do that. You can start that either as a part of the whole process or as a separate initiative.
So it's really mapping things out from processes down
Mm-hmm.
to the flow, the funnel, and whatever you could even think of putting AI, right?
Yeah, I think you should start. If you haven't tried it, you should start on the side. Spend an hour a day or on your free time in the evening. Learn about AI, learn about the tools, understand how they work, demystify this thing, right? It's complex, but it's not complicated. And then I don't suggest you overdo or make your process overly difficult. I just mean make sure you have a few steps in place, and let's get that going, and then you can refine once you get more data points based on kind of hit rate, conversion rates, and hit rates. Then you can know what you need to improve, and then in terms of leveling up your skills from a sales perspective, how can I convert 1 out of 2 calls? How can I convert, whatever, so you improve your hit rate on a human level as well.
And most of
Uh,
the time,
yeah.
just curious about, like, when you're dealing with your clients, do you also encounter that they don't know exactly what their sales process is in all
Yes.
steps? And
Yes. I mean, they have this. Yeah, there is typically, I would say, in a lot of startups, particularly because they come from a kind of, here's an engineer, an inventor, and PhD that invented something, and now they want to start sell. They know nothing about marketing and sales, so that they start from scratch, or they hire someone, but they need some capital in order to be able to do that. It's at least up here in where I live. It's employees are expensive, so they have to struggle themselves in the beginning for like first 6 months, and develop a process. And I help with I help incubators here locally to stage, like startups, and help them to do early exits, for example, in the pharmaceutical industry or in the medtech industry. It's super exciting, but they have no clue. And then there are a lot of people who have this vague idea. I get a request. I see if it's it. I qualify. They wouldn't know the word qualify, but they in essence, they qualify the lead, and then they have this. Okay, let's see if I can do a demo here, right? So they go too quickly. They try to close too quickly because they don't have a grasp of the sales process. Okay, you're eligible to buy from me. I want to show you my stuff now, rather than doing this, pre-sales or the interview, do the analysis of this particular case and see if there is a fit between what I have versus what the customer wants or needs. And so that's also where I come in. And I think it's interesting. And I think for anyone who wants to work with AI, is this crosshair where the two disciplines meet. So I have my sales experience and I have my technology knowledge. And so in that crosshair in the middle, I can offer something that very few people can offer.
Definitely.
And I think
definitely.
if you want to specialize yourself in one area, think about your hair cross, right? Your product, your knowledge, your skill, and your customer, and then figure out this. It's going to help you with your ICP, your ideal client as well, right?
Yes. And like you have written like 5 books, and obviously it's sales, right? Sales,
Mm-hmm.
but more specific into what part of sales are you going into?
I go into a few arenas. I do the psychology of sales or the psychology of influence. I spent like 4 years training with that and going to classes with an American professor in neurology, and particularly when it comes to how people make decisions. It's a fascinating subject to me. So sales psychology and sales communication with that scientific base in mind. Then it's B2B sales and key account management that has been my areas of focus. And many of those things that they combine or they blur, and the borders are not that straight. But business to business, key account management, the psychology of selling or persuasion is where I come from.
Wow.
And adding this technological advantage on top of that.
So there's a lot of stack within sales, just what you just mentioned, B2B, key account management,
Yeah,
psychology.
and yeah, and so it's like the idea of 10,000 hours to become a world expert, right? And so I had 10,000 hours on the phone. I have 10,000 hours on the street. I have 10,000 hours in key account. So I have a broad experience. And when you start out, obviously you have to. That doesn't matter. You start where you start, and then you grow from there.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And you grow, and you have grown very quickly, Justin. So you're just
Thank
an
you.
excellent role model.
Beautiful. I know that those were like the arena in sales. And let's talk about in sales, there's also a side of productivity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're doing outreach, when you're dealing with deciding which client to follow up first, those are probably parts of when you're doing sales. And it's not like the surface level of when you don't understand what sales is, you won't know like you would actually experience these situations. So if we're
Mm-hmm.
going to talk about if you want to build your own inbox AI tool, right, to kind of save you 1 to 2 hours daily, because sales is more like a number game as well. If correct me if I'm
Yep.
wrong, it's like
Yeah,
the
well, that's true.
more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a numbers game, and you need to keep doing what's important to you, right? So I found out very early in my career, I had a budget, and I divide my budget into the hours available in a year, and then I have a time value. So when I was working in New York, my time was worth $20,000 an hour. So I was very conscious about the fact that if my hourly rate is $20,000 in terms of revenue, not in terms of what I earned, but in terms of the revenue, I got very conscientious about how I spent my time very early in my career. and I've been chasing those hours and minutes since then. And at that time, when I was there, the secretaries or assistants at the time, they could book meetings in your calendars, and I had to drive all over town for a meeting that I didn't need to attend. So I stopped going to meetings if there was no clear objective and reason for me to be there. Cut my way through the corners to do what's really important. And I still ask myself every day, what's the most important use of my time right now? And I concluded that right now it's talking to you, and so put the so put the value on your time. Yeah, put the value on your time. If it's $20,000 or whatever, it doesn't matter. $100 doesn't matter. Just be aware that you don't waste $100. And if it's an 8-hour day, you waste $800. That's useless, right? So you have to figure out what's the most important thing for you to reach your goals, right? And in sales, it's prospecting, talking to customers, giving them offers and quotes, and following up. Everything else is a necessary evil. So how can we reduce the necessary evils, and particularly how do you cut out the unnecessary evils first, right? And so I had and in New York, I had 2 assistants that helped me with my emails, and this is like in 1994. It's a long time ago. And then it's out of fashion to have human assistants, right, in the workplace. They were rationalized away like 20 years ago, and so I've been playing with ways to how do I get to inbox 0? If I get 200 mails every day, how do I manage that? And I did various experiments, and we don't have time, I don't think, to talk about all the experiments I did. But it was clear that most emails are not very important. It's the 80-20 rule again, right? Most emails are spam, or they're very unimportant, or they are for your FYI, you're carbon copied, CC'd on messages if you're a manager, and you get a lot of shit unnecessarily. And I used to sit for 2 hours and do these mails, right? And I said, this is insane. So $20,000 an hour, and I'm, wading through my inboxes. This is useless. And so for me, that was one of the things I picked when I started out with AI. I did a functional specification. I've been a global product manager in the software, so I know how to make functional specifications. I sent it to a couple of companies to get a quote for, can you build this for me that I want to do? And it was a traditional software development company. They say, oh yeah, we can do this. It's going to cost $30,000 and it's going to take 9 months. And I got a little bit upset, maybe more than a little bit upset. So I decided I'm going to do this myself. So I spent 10 hours to prototype to how I want to organize a few of my inboxes. And then I put an AI in to help me be my assistant and my mail assistant for incoming mail. And I experiment a little bit without going, answering the emails and so forth. Primarily my win was to reduce my inbox. I only want to have the 4 or 5 messages out of the 200 messages that I need to respond to, where action is required and it's important. I want the assistant to keep that in my inbox, and I wanted to sort all other messages into different folders, right? And of course, the mail systems can do this automatically, but with the AI, you get much more specificity and much more control. So I sort, action needed stays in inbox. Then I have a folder for newsletter. I have a folder for archive to investigate. And I have a folder for delete immediately. Don't even look at it, And it took me 10 hours to prototype. It took me another 10 hours to get it to work, and then another 10 hours. So I invested my own time, 30 hours of work or a week. I had the system up and running. And it saves at least an hour a day for me. And I know, people have different habits in terms of how some people don't look at their inbox at all, ever. If someone wants something from me, they have to call on the phone or I mean, there are, old-fashioned sales manager or CEOs. They may do it that way, but this was I decided what I wanted for me, and I developed it and I rolled it out. Now is it, okay, so but it's custom. It's a custom tool. So that's another interesting question. When is it the right time to do your own custom work, or ask someone to help you to do your custom work versus using commercially available products,
Yeah,
right? Like,
that's an interesting question.
and I don't have it figured out in details, but because there are so many tools and they cost like $20 a month, right? So with my, just to keep on with this example of my mail system, okay, I started out with ChatGPT, and then the API calls. There's the cost of doing an operation, and since I have so many emails, there were a lot of operations, right? And it turned out to be very costly. So I mean, there are Chinese options, but I went for the French AI Mistral, and so the cost for the system now in operating cost is €2 per month,
Pretty good. €2. That's
rather than $30,000 to in 9 months. I got it in a week, and it cost me €2 a month.
wow.
I'm
Amazing.
happy. I'm happy.
Amazing. And that's what you mentioned about the 30 hours that you created that AI tool, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there was a bit of investment, right? I'm curious, and I have an engineering degree from in the past in electrical or electronical engineering. So I could do it. It's not for everyone, but you could also find someone to help you do these things. And that's another thing. What I discovered during that project is even if I have a functional spec, I know exactly what I want. There are a lot of design choices once you start to implement, and I'm sure you're aware of this, right? Should I go right or should I go left here? Should I put this little plug in here, or should I do that operation in? So even if you think you know what you want, you may need either you need to figure it out on your own, or you need to ask someone for help,
Yeah, that's true.
because you want to the straightest line between 2 points, right?
Yes. And if this
Right.
is like it's like a decision which you will be very confused. And as you know, like in sales or in any business, as a with a confused mind, there will be no decisions because you're
Right.
confused. Like when
Right.
you create your own, you could probably see, okay, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It could be cheaper, but I'll be spending and investing my time creating this tool. On the other hand, is also thinking about, okay, let's just get like off the rack solutions. Is it going to cost
Right.
much? Maybe. And would it be worth the time? So I think in my opinion, about, I'm not talking about a specific tool, but I'm talking
Right.
about in general. Like
Mhm.
when you want to pick an AI tool, like there's so much things you have to sift and sort. You have to test it. The testing
Right.
also will take time. So
It
so
does. It does.
there's the time is the element for both. You're gonna use time for you
Yeah.
to choose, and also
You're
yeah,
gonna need to invest time in both cases, right?
yes,
And so, and can you articulate it clearly? And do you have a good partner that can create this for you cheaper than the cost of your own time? Sure, you should do that. But I suggest you need a very smooth technology partner on the same level, because again, this integration of knowledge between your area of expertise and the crosshair again, technology versus area of expertise, you need to be cognizant about that. And I would not just hire anyone to do it for me.
exactly, exactly. It has to be filtered. It has to be specific. It has to be intentional, right?
Exactly.
So that's a very great topic, and I know that there's so much things that we can discuss about that.
We could do a separate episode on the technical side, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So we still have a few questions, and let's go over like probably the next one, which is much more about if you're talking about from a generalist standpoint to an authority, like probably you've run your own consultancy since 2007, or is it
Mhm.
earlier? What mindset
No, since that time. Yeah.
since that time? So what
Yeah.
what mindset shift like help you go from taking every client to speaking only to probably to revenue leaders?
Personally, I like to be data driven, right? So I track my time, even though I report to myself. I track my hours, and then at the end of the quarter, end of the year, I could calculate, okay, I spent so much time with this project, with this customer, and here is the revenue I got from it. So over time, I figured I wanted, okay, I'm gonna increase my minimum pay based on my current customer base and my knowledge and my experience. And so I was working with higher education and vocational training with the universities, and they don't pay so well. It's a fun job. It's great to be with young people and teach them stuff, right? But it's at some point I said no. I was cutting out my biggest client at this point in time, right? So it takes a lot of hours. It's a lot of income, but I'm going to say no, which I did. And then you open up the a time window for finding more lucrative clients and other types of businesses. So that's kind of the 80-20 rule shaped this path for me, right? Because I had the data points. I knew it wasn't just an emotion that said this is fun or this is not so much fun. Here is where the margin is. Here's where I earn my money. And then in the beginning, when you're starting out new in your own business, you don't know what you know. I wasn't clear about what I want to be a management consultant, right? And everyone I talked to wanted to help with me to help them with sales. So that drove me into the sales arena pretty quickly. My first client that I spent a few years with, they immediately put me on that path, on the sales improvement path. And then I started to, as I said, track the time, and that was kind of the first level. And after that, like as I mentioned earlier, me and my partner, we started to look at the ideal customer profile. And again, we struggled for a couple of years with that, and then we came to this conclusion that is the decision maker in this process. Can I find more of twin copies of the people that are buying from me now? And of course, I should have thought about that much earlier. Can I find twins? What are they? What's their function? What's their typical budget? Type of thing. That was number one. And then number two is to find other channels to market. Okay, so can I engage others to sell my product or my service for me, right? So in terms of education now, we have one company currently that are starting our AI classes. They're promoting our AI classes under their brand. And it'll go live in September of this year. So it's really exciting. And then I want to scale by having other resellers, right? So as well, right?
Beautiful. Well, in advance, congratulations on that.
Yeah,
You will
thank you.
do pretty well. And yeah, that's pretty valuable what you just mentioned about, like, if you just go back and remember 2007, that was a long time. And as you mentioned about the 80-20 rule, like this really sticks into this episode because, like, as you go along, you could probably do it much more earlier and lesser mistakes, I would say.
Yes,
Better
absolutely.
results.
Yeah, when I jumped on, I took strange jobs, right? You want someone to do a speech for you, I'll do a speech for you. If you want something to, do something about redundancy training in HR, I can know that I've fired a lot of people. I can do HR. I did a lot of mistakes in terms of saying yes to things that was outside of my area of focus. Learn to say no earlier. I think that's an important lesson if you're in the consultancy arena. Yeah.
So I'm curious about, like, when you were, you name it weird jobs or weird opportunities, right? If you didn't take those weird jobs or opportunities, do you think those weird jobs could probably form you as a person, or it wouldn't? What's your opinion?
I like the idea of being a generalist in terms of, so I, from an experience point of view, sure, these jobs influenced me and made me into what I am today. Sure. The question is the opportunity cost. Would it be if I'd be a different urban, if I had not taken them, would I have grown quicker in the sales arena if I did not spend time doing these other jobs on the side? But again, you don't know until you know. So
Yeah, true.
so I don't regret it. I think it's part of life's experience.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we're gonna go about like when not to use AI. It's more about the question around what questions do you ask a client to disqualify them from using AI too early? Because there are some stages in the business. Maybe they're still in the stage of, as you said earlier, like they're not sure exactly what is the
Hmm.
process. Not probably in your experience, like.
Right. Well, I would approach such clients as a sales or business coach, which is part of my, sort of my other experience. I'm a trained business coach, so that's easy. So I go into that role at first. Okay, so you have this situation, you're doing this. What do you want to do? Then I have this kind of coaching question in interview, and the coaching questions, if you're familiar, they're pretty similar to a sales methodology, but disguised in a different way, right? You want to understand the needs or the pain points of your client and where they want to, what's the end point they're reaching for, if they know. A lot of times they don't even know, but if they know, so I take it that way. And up till now, I've been also, then I take them on as a coaching client, typically. Okay, so let's sign up for, I can do coaching. I don't think AI is the right thing for you right now, but I can do some sales training and coaching with you and your team, right?
Mm,
And then so that I get like the first little piece of business from them, and to see if we're a good fit in terms of how we work together. And I work with some phenomenal inventors and geniuses over the years, and seen how they blossom and grow, and ultimately, if they want to exit and sell their company, they can retire comfortably. That's nice.
wow.
Then we talked about earlier the sales process and all these kinds of things, and then when we have the fundamentals in place, I'd be happy to discuss AI with them, or we can have an AI training class on the side, however they want them.
So at
And
the end of the
I have
day,
some. I
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
At the end of the day, it's more about not leaving money on the table, even if they're disqualified from using AI, but we still have an opportunity for them to.
Exactly, to some degree, and I may evaluate that in the future as I go, spend more time with this new focus of sales and AI in sales rather. So we'll see. I'll continue to split. If you do 80/20, you spend focus on your. I've done some major. I don't know how much time we got, but I had a project in Europe where I had to, reduce the direct buying customer base. And in my case, it was like in Europe, we had 10% of the clients were 90% of the business. And so we did we sort of shifted half of our direct buying customers into distribution channels, reselling and distribution. And in Germany, it's wholesale, which is a combination of that. And after doing that, so I cut my customer base in half, and I take a look, how much does that influence my revenue? Not at all,
Mhm.
with or 1 or 2%. And then I said to myself, I'm going to do 80/20 analysis on this new customer base, and it was still 10% of those customers or 90% of the business. So there is some force field in the universe kind of thing, where it's an interesting equation.
Yeah, interesting equation. Which 1090. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so let's go into much more of a sales rep enablement, right? Whether you're a
Hmm.
founder, there are companies that has been founder led in terms of using the sales tactics, sales systems. If we're going to talk about sales enablement in the AI arena, like
Hmm.
what are what are 1 to 2 simple ways sales leaders can use AI right now and help their teams close more without adding complexity? Like, it's just, as you mentioned, like, it could be the first step, but it could be not complex but more simple.
Well, it depends on, if you look at the team, again, number one, robust process in place. Number two, skill development on an individual level. If there's a lot of cold outreach, helping and coaching the team with a good script. And then once you have those good scripts in place, you could start using AI tools to shape and modify and refine those steps. And then you have to, I think, you need to look at where are the biggest hurdles. Where does it stop? Where does the flow stop? And it could be on a collective level, or it could be on an individual, on sales teams. I would typically, and here's another trick, you pick the best performing guy in the team and model from them, right? I've seen in a lot of cases, the best performing people, they're so busy they don't want to mess around. So you typically get other role models that are not so efficient to sort of come up with the specifications or the suggestions in process improvement. But pick the best guy and help them become even better. That's also the biggest bang for the buck for you as a sales leader. I always have time for my best performing employee. If they call 11 o'clock at night, I will answer the phone. I will answer very few other people, but I answer my best performing salesperson. So give them special treatment and develop a system from that. So depending on where the issue lies. And I would train the soft skills before I get into AI enablement. I would make sure I have an experienced sales team. I would do, joint meetings. I will sit in on the meetings. I will listen to the calls afterwards if it's on the phone, and so on. I will read the written documentation. I find a lot of young people nowadays, they have trouble expressing themselves in writing. Even so, if they're great sociable people, fantastic personality, but if they can't write, if you cannot write, you're not allowed to speak later. I mean, you have to be able to master both the written information and spoken language. And so that's where I would focus. So if it's a lot of getting new business in, I would focus on that part of the sales process, getting new prospects into my sales funnel. If it's another thing that I've found, particularly in tech companies, is that they go to demo too quickly. So I think it's very important that you have a good interview with the client before you propose anything. Most of the time, when I sell, I do the interview and the customer asks me to sell him something. I don't want to sell. I want the customer to ask. And so that's what I teach in terms of those soft skills. And I don't have a kind of strong case in AI for that, because it's soft. These are soft skills a lot of times. So, but I would stage the process with, formulating letters, having an offer or quote generator, which is one of my other products, to have an offer generator that I could provide you an offer in 10 seconds rather, can you give me a quote? Can you wait until Friday afternoon? I always kind of end of the day kind of a activity. It took me 30 minutes, 40 minutes to do a proper quote, even if I have good templates. Now I have that and AI enabled. So having a quote machine, I think it takes me 10 seconds. I can teach you how to make a quote in 10 seconds, right? Instead of 30 minutes. So those are the kind of productivity wins that give the team more time to interact with customers in various ways. And then I would automate the follow-up sequence, of course. But those are some of the things that I would focus on.
I'm just amused about what you mentioned about creating a quote, because most of the salespeople, like, it takes them sometimes even 7 days or a week. And when
Yeah.
when you're a salesperson, or maybe you're the other side of the end, which you're the prospect, it's not a pleasing experience. It's like you met them on a Friday and you have to wait until next week. Like,
Right.
the conversation is already overdue. Like, it's no longer fresh. about, let's say you have a qualified client who really wants to buy your product or solution, but
Yeah,
once the weekend comes in, like they just forgot about what you were selling, what was your conversation, and
right.
you have to warm up again.
It's a time save. That's a win. But it's also true that the first supplier that comes in with a quote often gets the order more than 50% of the time. So it's in your sales interest, or to reach your quota, it's in your interest to be as fast as possible. And yesterday, I was thinking, AI first now, where I'm at. So I was okay. My current accountant and legal advisor, he's retiring, so I'm looking for a new one. And I go, what would AI do? What would AI do? So I asked for a summary of some of the best providers at cost efficiency according to my criterias that I need to have in order to find a new supplier. And so I get a short list from AI, and then I do an outreach, and I go to their page, and I look at what the prices and what their offering is like, and it's exactly like that. So one gave me a quote immediately, and the emotion of that is, wow, I know it's automatic, I know you did something, you didn't sit personally, but I appreciate the fast response. And the other supplier that I reached out to hasn't responded. We will respond within 24 hours. Book a meeting. Okay, so I'm not booking that meeting just to see what they're going to do, because they are the people that I want to buy from, I think, before having looked into it. So it's such important in terms of closing the cycle time of contact to having a signed deal. You can shorten it quickly just by doing this, and you save yourself 30 minutes every time. I live. Then I have a cup of coffee instead, right? So
Exactly.
that's what I would do.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Those are more valuable in terms of any sales process, right?
Yeah.
Speed is one, and I
Cycle time and speed. Yeah.
cycle time, and also hopefully AI could focus on that area, which
Abs- Absolutely.
which can really reduce the speed of response, creating quotations, and there's so much more, right? Even follow-ups.
Yeah.
And if you can automate those things, I think that could be a winner in my opinion. But what's your take
Absolutely.
in terms of if you want to create an AI solution for sales? What
Right.
Where do you focus?
I number one, I want it personalized in terms of my using my tonality if I'm the person reaching out, and also data enriched, like we talked about it early in this program. Data enriched to focus on the customer and say something meaningful around their area of business. And then I would always keep a human in the loop. So I would have either set up a system where AI emails a draft into my inbox, or put it into a database, and then I confirm it, or I say yes, send this out, and then it's automatically sent out. Or I can pre-approve like the whole chain. First outreach plus three follow-ups. So okay, I have them ready to go.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we're thank you for all your wisdom today. And what we're gonna do before we even close this episode, there's this final five that I wanted to get from you, and this is inspired by Jay Shetty. I got this framework to kind of really have a one sentence answer from you. And so, are you ready?
Okay, let's. Okay, I'm fine.
All right. So, what's the best piece of sales advice you've ever received?
Don't push a circular object through a square hole. Don't even try to force fit something. If it's not perfect, leave it alone, right? If so, don't force fit your solution on a customer. Go to the next customer where it's a natural fit, where the key and the lock fits together and opens the door to great abundance and prosperity.
Beautiful, beautiful. And what's one sales tactic that used to work but now completely fails?
Well, the first example that I come to think about is the idea of using yes sets, right? Only asking closed questions where the client's supposed to say yes. People don't fall for that anymore, right? And what else is there that I come to think of at the top of my head? I think most fundamentals, in terms of what has been working in the last 50, 60 years in the modern age, since World War II, most of those tactics still work. You need to apply them slightly differently in terms of psychology, sales psychology, and in terms of how you express yourself, primarily where you express them, what channel do you get by. I think it's in this, how do I find the right channels for my 9 or 11 touch points. I think that's where the game is at, and I think you need a hybrid approach, in my opinion, to make it most effectively. And then you have to sequence it in a specific way where you develop a broad sense of rapport with your prospect, trust, liking, and rapport with the customer. So yeah, I think most of the tactics, well applied, they work. Some of the what doesn't work is used salesman's tactics of how you close a deal. Those things, well, they may work on occasion, but not recommended. But they never were. I would say.
Beautiful. And why do most founders hesitate to adopt AI? In just one sentence.
It's unfamiliarity. I mean, it's a sense of insecurity, and they're a bit afraid. So it's fear at the essence. And so anything new, everything is dangerous when you find something new in terms of, society and on a personal level most of the time. So just get your feet in the water. Just try it. Just use it a little bit, and then we can talk about the other stuff later, in terms of the evolution of AI, and there's so much things going on in terms of what to watch out for and so on. But just understand the basics.
Understandable.
I'd like to talk to you about some of the other aspects in terms of data security and stuff at another point in time.
Yes, we're going to reserve that for another episode. So, if you had 10 extra hours a week, how would you reinvest them into your business?
I would revamp. I would do A and B testing on my outreach, number one, and that's it. And I would also include, in outbound marketing. How can I extend my sales funnel into the sales and marketing funnel, or marketing and sales funnel, more effectively? I've been using it personally as a campaign tool, but I want to integrate that into a constant flow. There should always be new prospects coming in, new fish to be caught in the net every day, even when I sleep. So that's what I would do. I would focus on the early stage in the sales and marketing process.
Valuable. And one last thing is, if you could create one AI law every business must follow, what would it be?
Oh, I don't know, Justin. A law, a legislation?
It's a law about how what your beliefs that could either help businesses.
Yeah, I think it would be something around the lines of being authentic, being the authentic you, either both as a person, as a salesperson or a sales leader, and as a company or a brand. To be authentic,
Be authentic.
not not fake it. I mean, maybe, if you ask AI to dream up a campaign, it just throws some statistics that seem to be reasonable, and a lot of people use fake numbers and fake quotes and fake everything. Don't be like those people. I think that there should be legislation about fake claims.
So it's authenticity versus the fake.
Yeah.
All right. And
Yeah, I like that. Maybe we should go into politics or something.
yes, yes. And one, maybe just one word from you. Like, what do founders or sales leaders need more right now? In one word.
Courage.
Courage.
see the opportunities. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Try these new tools out if you haven't. If you started, continue to look how you can implement them in your environment.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining my podcast episode, Urban, and wish you all the best in your program in September. And we will
Yeah, it's
talk
going to
about,
be exciting.
yes, it is. And we're going to talk about maybe other collaborations in the future. And
Yes, absolutely.
thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me to your show, and all the best to you as well. And talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you soon. And thank you for watching FlowMax AI Podcast. And I'll see you on my next episode.